I had to break out something new. Like I was walking like an Egyptian because
I like walk like an Egyptian.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that when my kids are doing sports and I want to try and get them to laugh or something, and they're or doing something on the stage, and I always do like the walk like an Egyptian, trying to embarrass them. So I was like, I'll bring that to the Ben and Ryan show. So guys, welcome to the Ben and Ryan show. I'm your host Ryan Brown, joined by my co-hosts Ben Nadel. Ben, thank you for joining us as always. And it is our honor to have Peter Amiri join us today. Peter, did I get your last name? And
absolutely, yeah.
And it's funny, speaking of pre-show, every single episode, I tell the guest, I should have asked you how to pronounce your last name before we started.
There's a funny story about that. I started my career as a consultant. And back then we didn't have video calls, so we were on the phone with clients and stuff like that. And for months with this one client, I was always on the phone saying, "Hi, this is Peter Amiri." And one time we got to the point that we're meeting in a conference room, and I walk in and say, "Oh, I'm Peter." And they go, "Where's Mary?" I go, "What are you talking about?" I thought there's two people on the phone this whole time. So that's, there you go.
Nice. Before we kick off the call or before we get into the actual topic, I just want to say full disclosure. I now work for Peter, so anything that gets mentioned on this call can and will be used against him in internal meetings.
All right, so again, we love repeating ourselves on the Ben and Ryan show. So like every episode, again, we've gone 2 minutes into it, and we've yet to tell you what this episode's about. So all of the podcast etiquette says you should tell everybody what it's about right in the very beginning to hook them. So we just dance for you. That's your hook. But yeah, so this episode we are doing. We're talking about surviving a ransomware attack. So Peter's going to go into some details, and we're going to be delicate with him. This is some PTSD for him about a very interesting ransomware attack. So Peter, actually, why don't you first kind of start off telling us why you're even going through this? Because I mean, it was not a fun experience.
Yeah. So I hope that people come away from this episode with a better understanding of what it's like to be attacked. What can you do to prepare? I won't say what can you do to prevent, because we'll get into why that's a fool's errand, and what you may want to consider that you may not have considered. The way I've kind of structured it in my mind is we'll talk pre-breach, what our posture was, what we thought we were doing and stuff like that. And then we'll get into the breach and talk about that story a little bit. And then post-breach, what have I done since to try to put ourselves in a better position if and when something like this happens again.
All right, so why don't you get into the pre-breach, kind of giving people an idea of what security precautions you guys were already taking, and kind of how that made you feel like you were secure.
Yeah. So pre-breach, we have a backup model that we were following, and people may have heard the 3-2-1 model. 3 copies of something, the original being one of those copies saved in 2 different locations, and one of them being offsite. So it's an industry standard. A lot of people, best practice. If you're doing the 3-2-1 model, you're probably in a good place. Then, the other thing that we were doing is the typical secure the perimeter. We secure the firewall. People go through the VPN to hook in. And then beyond that, several years before the breach, we had subscribed to getting cyber security insurance, and these are insurance policies. They're getting harder to get because the attack surface and attack volume is getting larger. But we had a security policy in place, and a couple of years.
Can I pause and ask you a question about that insurance policy? Because I know being at Xbyte, we've gone through these discussions about, do we get cybersecurity insurance? So what made you guys decide to pull that trigger to actually get the insurance? Because it's not, I don't believe it's cheap, if I recall correctly.
It's not cheap, but it's much cheaper than, what would be the impact of the business. So you have to kind of gauge it from a business perspective, and approach it that way. So we're very insurance prone as a management. We've got insurance for everything. So it was just, it was a no-brainer to get cybersecurity insurance as well. And like I said, we started very early on. It was cheaper and there were less restrictions. Then a couple of years into the renewal, and every renewal cycle, it seemed like they wanted something more. So one of the renewal cycles was, have you implemented 2FA or MFA? Okay, so we're a Office 365 shop. We have to implement 2FA for our Office platform. And how do we do that? What are the techniques and technologies that we bring and we implement that? Then the next cycle, they wanted EDR, which is, endpoint detection and response, which is typically an agent or a software you install on all your workstations or your servers, and they sit there and watch things and report when they see malicious or abnormal activity. So we had to implement EDR. That's in itself, that was probably, in the order of things, 2 to 3x the cybersecurity policy cost.
Oh, wow.
So the software and the apparatus that you install and stuff like that is expensive. There's no way around it. So we had those things in place. So we kind of felt like we are secure. Where I think, and this is kind of getting into post, but where I think this falls apart is we're not security experts. So a little bit of the post, in hindsight, in the forensics analysis and stuff like that, the EDR package had picked up the attempt to install a malicious software and had reported it, but we missed it. Me and my staff missed it. So that went unnoticed because we're not security experts. We're not watching that software or what, and just like any other type of, virus protection, the noise can be a lot. So you tend to, get blind to the fact that, hey, this thing threw up another thing. I'll get to it in a second. And sometimes it can bite you. So
that's alarm fatigue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was kind of our security posture. I felt like we were comfortable that we had, secured the perimeter. Our VPN users had to do 2FA, which meant they had to have, something installed on their mobile devices, and our Office platform was secure. We didn't allow web-based access to the Office 365 platform, so it's all desktop-based, and we thought we were secure. So we'll get a little bit into the breach. So the breach occurred on, it was a 0-day. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we get into the breach, do we just want to quickly define for listeners what a ransomware attack is?
Sure. I don't know if this is the textbook definition or whatever. It's basically when you are attacked by a threat actor and they are demanding some monetary payment in order for them not to do what they say they are going to do, or to allow you to recover from what they've already done. Most cases is you get attacked, they encrypt files on your servers, and you're paying a ransom to get those files unencrypted or get them back. So that was kind of our scenario. We were attacked, and some level of stuff was encrypted, and we were, in a scenario of, do we recover? Do we engage? And we'll get into that as we're going through the story.
One last question on that one. if you're comfortable saying how long ago was this?
A couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago, okay. Because I know in talking or in listening to people talk about this in the last couple of years, because people have been more having backup copies and kind of switched to the model that you're going to get into in a second, that it's more of an extortion where they say, hey, we're going to leak this sensitive information out to the public.
Yeah.
So it's not even a matter of can you restore, but and I guess I'm getting some into the post, but did they try and do any of that or leak any of your secrets or your source code?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
So they obviously have to have. So let's just go through.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for jumping in.
No, because it makes a little bit more sense in the whole apparatus. So the breach itself was a 0-day on our firewall technology. So the device that we're using to secure our perimeter had a hole, and the threat actors got access to that device through there, and then got access to our environment. Then the typical way they try to figure out, elevate security, and in hindsight, we believe they were in our environment for about 3 to 4 months prior to the call.
Oh, man.
Wow. We believe that they probably, some of our administrative users, people in my team, their emails were probably compromised. We believe that they had access to our Slack channel.
Oh my goodness.
And our posture at the time was whenever we had like an event in IT, we would do a postmortem and document it in Slack so the team would know. So they were able to find out a lot more of how we do things, where things are, where the keys to the kingdom are, and those types of things. Where, your mileage may vary. They may not be able to do some of those things. But since then, we have 2FA on everything, including all of the systems that our IT staff uses. We have Slack in particular. We have not only 2FA, but we have a timeout scenario. So after a certain number of hours, your session is automatically timed out and you have to log back in.
Can confirm. I'm logging into Slack a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not like 24 hours. It's a short period.
Something shorter is something like 8 hours. So if you start your day early, you will have to log in again midday. But definitely, if you go away for the night, you come back the next day, you have to log back in. But we did these from an analysis perspective after the fact to say, okay, they knew a lot more than what we would typically think they would be able to figure out by just scanning the network and jumping on a machine and that type of stuff. And we'll get a little bit into that. So the way we discovered the attack. So I explained a little bit, and I don't know whether this is pre-show or after show. So what the threat, the 0-day was discovered by the vendor. They informed their top tier customers and provided a patch to them. That was about a month and a half before they made a public announcement and announced the availability of the patch for the public or rest of their customers. That announcement came on a Thursday evening, and Thursday morning at 4 a.m., they pulled the trigger on us. So it was, in our mind, it was driven
Yeah.
by
They
the
panicked and they were like, we better get this going.
If they didn't do it, we would have, installed the patch and they would lose their connection. So I happened to be I work on the West Coast. Our company headquarters is on the East Coast. I happened to be in town for our holiday party. So I wake up, Thursday morning, typical what I do is I pick up my phone and look at the alerts that got thrown the night before. And I pick it up and I see that, our main website is down. And I get on our Slack channel and I ask my team, hey, anybody know why the website's down? And one of my team members responds back, well, the website is down because the ERP system is down. I'm like, okay. At this point, we had multiple other members coming on, and one person, suggests that something's going on. I don't know what's going on yet. So we log into our virtualization environment. We don't use any of the typical virtualization environments, and that was another one of those comfort zones that I had. That we use a fairly less known virtualization platform. It's not the one that starts with an M and a W. But we were kind of complacent that, hey, nobody uses this thing and we're probably okay. But one of the features of this platform is when you log into the admin panel and somebody does something, like when you do an export or you do a delete or you do a clone, it pops up like these bubbles with messaging, and they kind of stack on top of each other if you're doing a bunch of stuff. And I log into that and I've got a bunch of messages scrolling by that,
oh man,
snapshot delete, snapshot delete, snapshot delete, snapshot delete. So there was a active, and it was coming through faster than anything. So this was a scripted thing that the threat actors were deleting the snapshots, and the snapshots are immediate recovery point, for a VM. So at this point, we know somebody's in our system. We don't know how they got in. We don't know what they're doing. And we basically made the decision to cut off our internet connection. So I logged into our data center remotely, logged into our core router, and shut down the port, which immediately disconnects me from everything else as well. But we knew that would stop everything. And by this point, we have a bunch of vendors online and checking different things and directing us that, this is the best approach. And then we went in to try to figure out what our next step is. So those are like the beginning moments of this. Immediately when you find out, hey, I've been breached, and there's somebody in our systems, and you take the immediate call of disconnection, and then you have to go, try to figure out, how bad is it?
Yeah, the amazing part so far of the story is the fact that you saw them in there deleting stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like you came in like you're. And so I have a question on that.
Yep.
Did the cutting the internet stop the scripts, or were they running from were they locally running?
And cut off the deletes, which meant that they were running those remotely, because they had, presumably they had VPN tunnel gateway to us. So after that initial round, we were trying to figure out, where do we stay? So by this time, I start driving into the data center, and my team is like checking the various machines. Some of them were on site, so they could see some of them as soon as because we have a distributed team. Some of them, as soon as I disconnect, they can't get in anymore either. But we at that point discovered the ransom notices on some of the machines, on some of the servers, that, hey, your files are being encrypted. Contact us to get further messaging. So we go in, look at our virtualization environment. They had deleted probably 65% or 60% of the snapshots. We are primarily a Windows shop, but we have some Linux environments. All the Windows machines had been encrypted. The Linux machines hadn't been touched. And then the other part of this was that we have 3 data repositories, sort of. We have a relational database, we have an ERP system, and then we have a Elasticsearch search engine type thing. The Elasticsearch was fine because I was running on Linux. The ERP system and the relational database were encrypted.
Oh, jeez.
So we found ourselves, and then we're like, okay, remember that 3-2-1 approach, the one copy being remote. We found that they were in our systems long enough to have compromised an administrative account, where they used the administrative account to send a change of password request to the offsite vendor. And 8 minutes after that, they sent a delete account request to the offsite vendor, and the vendor's posture is, once you delete your account, we're going to remove all your data. So all of the remote data was gone. So we found ourselves in a pickle. The thing that saved us, in a sense, was we had a database event that had occurred a week prior where somebody had screwed up one of the tables. And the way we ended up recovering from that was we used the capabilities of our virtualization environment to take a snapshot, grab a drive from that snapshot, attach that virtual drive to another machine, and then we recovered the tables out of that version and put it back into our main.
Oh, man.
So we had a copy of our database that was about 7 days old. That hadn't been touched because it was on a completely different machine. So that's one of the triad of data. Then we had another copy of the ERP system. We had just migrated the ERP system from a different virtualization environment into this main virtualization environment about 3 months prior. So that other version was turned off and, wasn't doing anything. So we had that as well. So we have one set of data that's about 7 days old. And the reason we think, going back to that Slack being compromised, because we very openly documented what occurred, how we recovered, and all this stuff. So that's why I think they knew, where the database was even, and that kind of stuff. We use names, of God and goddesses. So we don't have, a main DB out there. It's something that you wouldn't be able to tell it. Hey, what does this thing do? It's got a different name. So, but going through that exercise, by midday we had figured out that, okay, we have one set of data that's about 7 days old, another set of data that's about 3 months old, and our Elasticsearch repository hadn't been touched, so that's there. And a lot of our transactional historical information we were dumping in Elasticsearch with the hopes of doing something with it later. Oh. So we could probably recover some of this. So that's kind of the lay of the land of what we had. So at that point, we made a decision to engage our insurance carrier. Let them know that we've had an event. And the first thing the carrier will want to do is they'll want you to set up a incident response team and bring an incident response vendor and a breach attorney. This is all they do. They're involved with the laws and ramifications and stuff like that. And they made recommendations of people that they've worked with in the past, and we just said, done, bring them in.
Do you bring in authorities? Because this is a criminal act. And that's extortion.
That's why the attorney's there.
Gotcha.
Because we get into, I don't want to spoil the party, but we eventually engaged the threat actors, and in order to engage, we have to inform the FBI. In order to pay, you have to run things through the FBI.
Really?
What
is that for insurance reasons or just for legal reasons?
The legal ramifications. It's my understanding that like Bitcoin is a lot more traceable than other payment gateways. So you're typically given a price if you pay with Bitcoin and given a discount if you pay with something else. But the legal authorities and the FBI, and that's why the attorney was in the team, they will tell you you can't pay with the other one. You have to pay with Bitcoin.
Interesting.
And then they will want to run the wallet through their mechanism and say, yes, you can pay to this wallet, or no, you can't pay to this wallet. So there's ramifications of engaging that you could mess yourself up if you don't have the right team in place and guiding you through this process.
Bonkers.
So yeah.
So from breach to I'm curious timeline wise, from breach to you're actually talking to the FBI, what kind of a time period is that?
That's several days down the process because you're not.
Okay.
Yeah. So from breach to talking to our insurance carrier, we're talking several hours. It was towards the end of the day that we could get a conference call with all the parties involved. And during that call, we decided that we're going to go with the vendors they recommended. We engaged the vendors later on that evening. And the next morning, we had boots on the ground from the vendor. So we had on-site people helping us. So one of the very first things once this happened is I need to get to a point where I feel comfortable that my network is clean.
Right.
So, and that's where the boots on the ground helped to install software on, we try to get all our systems, but as long as we got to, I think we got to like 75, 80% of all end nodes were installed, that's when they felt comfortable that, okay, you can turn on the internet because they had enough eyes of what may be going on. And then the other part of this that kind of helped us was we run our own virtualization environment because I come from that kind of a world. I'm okay. I know my way around the data center and stuff like that. A lot of people will be cloud-based, so this may not be that big of an issue. But for us, having enough capacity to leave the initial encrypted servers alone while the incident response team is doing deep analysis on those, and having enough capacity to raise another set of servers. So we immediately went down the path of, business team is trying to figure out how do we run business operations without a business system. And this is, a business system where you typically can't move a widget in the warehouse without a system being there to respond to a, trigger pull on a scan gun. So how do you go from full automation to full manual? And that's what they were dealing with. We on the IT side were dealing with, okay, we need to rebuild. And let's take stock of what do we have, and we immediately figured out that we can probably rebuild with a little bit of missing data. We knew we would eventually get to a point where we have some missing data. We'll deal with the ramifications of that missing data when we get there. But, here's one set of servers and we got like 190 VMs that run our operation. So we can't touch those. We have to stand up another set of VMs.
You said 190 VMs?
Yeah, for redundancy and all the various tooling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we had to stand up a second set and build those from scratch.
And you said you did have the capacity within your
we have
infrastructure to do that?
And that's the other thing that hopefully people that have their own environments take away is that you need to have additional headroom. Because if we were in a world of hurt, we wouldn't be able to create a completely duplicate environment in our virtualization environment, and that would hamper.
Sure.
Do I need to delete some of these things, and then the analysis that's going on has to stop on that because I need the space to stand up a new VM for this other thing.
Now, there is another option. You can, being from the hardware space, I know we've. I'm not going to plug any companies.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to look in the lower corner of our podcast, you can. But I know we've rented servers to people before for this type of stuff. So if they're not, if they don't have the same capacity you, we'll say, hey, look, it will immediately ship because we can build servers pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And many companies can. So and do a rental contract for somebody.
Right. And there are actually disaster recovery contracts or insurance policies that you can subscribe to that they will drop ship X amount of servers, equipment, whatever on a drop of a dime if you have that type of thing. So but in our environment, we were able to start that process. So we started that process over the course of that weekend. This whole thing went down on Thursday. So by that weekend, we're at this point, working 24/7. It wasn't until I want to say early the following week that we also started a side thread of engaging the threat actors.
Now, so if you've already been running, because the business is going still, they're still moving.
No, business is down.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Business is down because there is no computer system, and we can't. There's a whole apparatus. So let's say I have my relational database and I have my ERP. One is 7 days old, one is 30 days old, and I've got my third repository, but I don't have everything else. And just that that ERP system needs another server that has all the print queues defined on it. That's not there. That's an encrypted server. So I have to rebuild all those print queues. So that gets into that 190. Let's say that out of that 190 VMs, there's 125 of them that we absolutely need to have running to run our operation. The rest of them are redundancies. So I need to build all those things, and we have various teams now dedicated to build each of those pieces. And that leg of this was running down the road where by Thursday evening we only had a single machine that was missing out of the pie. And that machine was a contracted vendor had to come in to the machine and actually reinstall the software for us. We didn't have access to do that ourselves. So that was scheduled for a Friday install. So this is like a week later. Okay. So that's the path that we were going down on the rebuild and eat the data loss difference and everything, and probably be back up by Friday-ish of the next week, and own up to what the ramifications of the data loss was after we're back up. By around Monday or Tuesday of the week, we started the third leg of the process, which was engaging the threat actors just to see, what is it? And initially, they were very difficult to engage with, and this is where
that's weird.
Yeah, this is where your incident response team comes in. They are the ones that are actually communicating and negotiating and stuff like that. You're not talking to the threat actors yourself. So they said, this is kind of weird. We can't get their attention. Seems like the people that are talking back to us don't have the authority to talk. Almost like, I don't know what it is. Well,
do they have a call center?
There is this software as a service model in the threat actor world. So there are people that will engage and buy services from other people and and they've got the software and they got the attack surface and stuff like that, and they're not really, they're getting a cut, but they're not involved. Somebody else has to make the final decision because it's really their, campaign. So it really weird. But then eventually we got to a point where you go in and you see the price of the ransom. And the price of the ransom was really, 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 really low. By that, I would say that our insurance policy is in the 7 figures. The price of the ransom was in the low 6 figures. So immediately we're being warned that, this is so low that this might be a re-engagement type of thing. You end up paying for this, and then they come back and they give you a key. The key doesn't work, and that was a wrong key.
You want the real key? Yeah. That's more expensive.
That's also going in our mind based on the feedback of our team that's working with us. And the other part of this that is going through the back of my mind is, are we really going to get a key that's going to work? Because I can see where files on a on a file server, let's say, get encrypted, and you get a decryption key, and you run it against those files, and you get all the data back, and no problem. I was skeptical that we could have a running relational database have its files be encrypted behind its back without getting corrupted in the process.
Yeah.
And then you run the decryption key on it, and you get a running database. I was skeptical that process would even yield, but I was willing to engage because the management was willing to engage. So that whole process goes through these specific steps, and verification that they actually have the key is one of those steps. And the way they do that is typically they've exfiltrated some of your data, and they say, we've got the data off of this machine. Ask us to give you back, and that machine is encrypted, so you can't get to any of the data. So they say, ask us to give you back some of the information from that, and I think they offer you 2 files, and if you get those 2 files back, that proves that they actually have your data, and they have what's been removed, or and you go through that. That's the verification phase of this. And I would imagine if people are in a world of hurt, the 2 files they're going to ask for off of that server are the most important files. And this happened to be an accounting server that they had done this to. So I think they would have expected some really, important top security type of file that we're going to ask them. And I just looked at the directory structure of that file, that server, and asked for 2 dummy README files out of some directory embedded deep, to the point that they're like, this is the files you asked for? We don't understand, but okay. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what's important to me. So you go through that process, and then we went through the process of engagement. And this is kind of where we, in hindsight, we understand that, we were caught up in probably thousands of environments that we're doing at the same time. Environments that they were probably not completely prepared to pull the trigger on, but they were pulled the trigger on because the announcement had gone out, and if they would have waited, they would have probably lost any level of.
So they were busy.
They were very busy.
Yeah,
they were busy, and they couldn't.
You call up, and they're like, "We're having it's a period of high activity right now.
Yeah.
Please wait in the queue."
Yeah. And that's probably why they weren't able to do a complete analysis of what can this company afford. So they just threw out a lowball number and like, okay, fine, let's go. So from the point that we saw the amount they gave us, to the point that we had the exchange to validate, to the point that we decided to pay, and we had to, and that's something in and of itself that you have to, it's not up to us. The insurance company has to agree and run it up their chain and stuff like that. But at some point during the week, the agreement was had. We had to then move into the phase with the FBI, and can we pay with this? Can we pay with that? Can we, engage with payment on this? Anyway, all of that transactional stuff happened, and I think late Thursday night we got the key.
Now, what for internal purposes? What made you guys? Because you guys had a plan to get the servers back up by Friday-ish.
Yeah.
Was it the data loss?
Yeah.
From the week that made you guys pull the trigger for?
Well, it's not just the data loss for the week. It would have been data loss over a 3-month time frame, because that's the latest set of the copy of the data.
For the ERP.
Yeah. So in order to not have lost, the transactional loss of business loss is baked into this whole thing. That's there. By being able to recover to the point of, the incident was important. So we still had, and what I mentioned is that middle tier of rebuilding our environment, we still had that going. So come Thursday night, we had to decrypt our servers. And here's where having enough capacity comes into play again, because I didn't want to touch the original servers. So here's a third copy of everything that we had to stand up, because I still wanted to retain the original servers just in case. And then we started running the encryption key on the third copy. So I've got, the original set that we can't do anything because they're all encrypted, the middle set, which is all the rebuild stuff from scratch, and then the third copy, which is a cloned image of the original set, but with the decryption key run on it. And we had to make the analysis before the next Friday, where the vendor was going to come in to install that last piece, whether we needed that or not. So we went through the exercise, noticed that everything is working fine, and we made the no-go decision Friday morning that we're going to go with the copy of the decrypted copy. So yeah, not too many of us got any sleep during that whole week.
Oh, it sounds awful.
Yeah.
Now, so your worry and suspicion that the database would not function again?
Yeah.
That was no issues then. So it came right back on.
Yeah, they are good coders. These. But I will tell you that when we got the encryption key, we got an encryption key for Windows servers or Windows machines, and we got an encryption key for a virtualization environment that starts with a V and has a M and a W in it. So had we had that virtualization environment, we wouldn't even be able to create a second copy or a clone or use capacity, because they would have encrypted the host itself. So that's another thing to throw out there, that those are the two machines that these threat actors, or two platforms that these threat actors attacked. So if you're using, if you're using those, beware. And we're a Windows shop, so we can't step away from that. But the fact that we're not using the mainstream, virtualization environment helped us in that sense.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I'm so surprised that ransomware has been a thing for quite a while. At least over a decade, I think, and it's on the rise every year. I'm just surprised, not fully understanding the mechanics of it all, how the operating systems of computers don't have things in place that will prevent it from happening. I guess if you can access the file system and you can read files and you can write files, but
Yeah, a lot of things that you'll see are going towards like versioning, and that's kind of if everything is versioned,
right? Like a write ahead, like an append only log kind of.
Yeah, and so if I think Microsoft has some of these things in their OS where you can turn on file versioning, and what that means is okay, you have your copy of the file, and you make a modification. Well, the operating system has a mechanism where you can go back and say, give me version 1 of it. So you can't prevent, but you can recover because everything was versioned, and you can recover to a point in time before the strike, so to speak.
Yeah, I think SharePoint has that built into it, I believe.
Something,
But I guess you're accumulating more and more data then at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's
Rod's like, if you need servers, we got servers.
Yeah, so that kind of takes us complete circle of the story of the threat itself. What we went through, how we engaged, the decision to engage or not, the decision to pay or not, to what it was like to kind of rebuild from the ashes, and a lot of those, I chalk up to our capacity, availability, that we were able to do that in-house in a quick time. So literally from the point that we went dark to the point that we came back was about 7-8 days, which is pretty good when you hear about companies being offline for months at a time, and they're still struggling.
Now, did you say that they did or did not try and release any of your personal information?
No, so
or not until they see this video.
Yeah. So one of the steps of that engagement is literally you dial into a video call where they are showing you their machine, and they type delete all in this thing, and you see files get deleted, and you go, oh, I have such a warm feeling that you deleted the files that you said
can trust us.
Delete. Yeah. So were we told that the files were deleted? Yes. Do I make any type of an assumption that the files actually were deleted? No. So it is what it is. You live with that process.
Yeah. Now you have to go through and add 2 to the end of all your passwords.
So that's
no. You change that. You change. You just incrementally add 1.
At least
it was like 73. Make it 74. You don't just add a 2. Like, it's too long.
So this gets us into some of the post breach. I said at the beginning that we were subscribing to the 3-2-1 model. 3 copies of everything in 2 different locations, 1 offsite. I now have 11.8.3. There's lots of copies of things stored in multiple places and in multiple offsite locations. And from my perspective is I can't prevent, because we didn't do anything wrong,
right,
to have been part of this massive breach. But I have no assumption that some other device or tool or whatever that we're using, or just a phishing scheme of a member of our team, get somebody to be able to come back in and attempt this. So recovery is more important to me, and not having to stress about, am I going to have 3 months of data loss, and how's the company going to survive, and all this other thing. Okay, we have X number of copies, and the apparatus is much more spread out. Then the other thing is that we have systematically moved all of our software products, whether they're software as a service or whatever, to the SSO model, single sign-on, meaning we are using a third-party provider to give us that capability, And all tools are now tied into that, including all of our administrative tools, all the customer-facing tools. Anytime that a team or department comes to us in IT and say, "Hey, I want to use X, Y, and Z, software as a service," and it's only $5 a month, or it's only $10 a month. You can't use that version. You need to use the enterprise version that has SSO, which is $40 a month per user type of thing. And we own up to the fact that we have to pay an additional cost, but it gets us to a point that everything's more secure and everything comes back to a Active Directory account that we can, as soon as we turn that off, their access to everything in the environment is turned off.
This is a kind of an aside question here.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used SSO now at several places, and the SSO is always accompanied by some sort of two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Is that natively part of SSO, or is that a feature you can turn on and off?
So the way I look at it is SSO just means single sign-on. So your users log into one thing, and that one thing is then, the single source of truth. Everybody logs in with the same credentials,
right,
so to speak. You can probably implement SSO yourself, completely by yourself, and not have 2FA involved at all.
Gotcha. But if you're paying for SSO features, might as well get the two-factor authentication.
Right. So we internally had, several years prior, had started somewhat of an SSO, which is everything, our Active Directory was our system of truth. So we tied our VPN access to our Active Directory, and we tied our web systems to do LDAP lookup to that Active Directory account. So when we turned off, even Wi-Fi access was controlled through Active Directory. So if we turned off a user's record in Active Directory, they lost connectivity to or access to all these various systems.
Oh, wow.
Where SSO comes in is it kind of plays the middleman in there, and what you're kind of buying some of these SSO providers. So Okta, Duo, and there's probably several others out there. What they bring to the table is some additional heuristics. So you can put rules in. So now when somebody tries to log into one of our systems, they're actually making a call out to this third-party provider. The third-party provider is actually using our Active Directory as the system of truth to say, hey, what is your password? Yeah, you gave us the right password. And are you in the Active Directory group to have access to this thing? Yes, you are. And then they go further and they're like, do we trust the machine that you're on? Do we trust the IP that you're on? You seem to have logged in from a different IP now than this time. So we're going to interrogate you further. So there is
right. I get
there's a level
phone
of
push notification.
Yeah. So there's a level of the word escapes me.
Escalation.
There you go. So you can get push notification to your phone. You can get a notification that, hey, we presented a code on your phone. You need to type that in. You may have to do certain other things, but that's all part of their domain and the comfort feeling that you sign up for when you do that. It's like, okay, you guys make sure the people that are logging in to our environment going through you are actually who they say they are, and we don't have to worry about that. So that's my take on it.
This is so, as a side tangent here for a second. So I'm a JP Morgan Chase. That's been my personal bank for I think my dad set up my account when I was 16 or something. And they've really stepped up their security, it seems, in the last year or two, where I recently had to reinstall my operating system because I was trying to get the VPN working. Right. And when I went to log into my Chase Bank website for the first time since then, I literally had to call them so that they could send me the first code Like they sent it via text message, then I would enter that code. And then at that point, like my computer was now trusted and I could enable the regular 2-factor authentication. It was bonkers. I've never seen that before.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you step up for when you sign up with one of these vendors that gives you the identity protection capabilities, and SSO just comes along for the ride.
We were talking with Justin Scott, and actually on our first podcast we did, and he was mentioned. We talked about, okay, can you roll your own authorization? Like, should you develop your own authorization? Mm-hmm. He was talking about a lot of times business cases, they come in, they're like, no, we have to have single sign-on, and this is one of those business cases where they're like, hey, look, if all you have is your own email authorization, you guys just take the stance we can't use you, right? Because you're not allowing SSO with any of our vendors.
Yeah. The assumption is that if you're doing SSO, you're doing some, multi-factor capabilities on top of that SSO. So SSO intrinsically can be done without providing any additional level of security.
Yeah.
You can have everything go back to a single source and authenticate you, and you're in. But then if you don't have,
you're wasting money.
Yeah. So that was there. A couple other things that we implemented post breach was we set up a DR site. So we have another data center that gets nightly snapshots of our servers that is offline, so it can't get tampered with. You can't send delete requests. So if the same exact thing happened again and somebody breaches our admin panel and starts deleting the snapshots off the main site, there's a disconnect between the main site and those deletes won't propagate to the DR site. So the DR site would still have copies of everything.
The term for that, they call it, I think, air gapped is what they call. Whoever the backup software is, they'll only open up that channel at certain times and certain times only.
Interesting.
So as Peter was saying, there's no delete, and you can't delete records. There are no delete requests there.
Yeah. So that, and I've implemented. So I had several conversations at the very top level with our virtualization vendor, and he showed me kind of what it's the founder and / CTO of the company, and he showed me, this is what I do. So I got this going to here, and I got that going to here, and I got this going to here. And guess what? After all of this, I still do an export of the VM because I can put that VM export and in upload it into any virtualization environment in the world and have that. So we've taken some of that into account as well. So we have all kinds of stuff now going on. And then another thing that I mentioned earlier in the call was the EDR, endpoint detection and remediation. And the next layer on top of that is what people refer to as MDR, managed. And that's kind of what we subscribe to. So the incident response team that was brought in to help us do the forensics and clean the environment and stuff like that, we ended up retaining them after the incident. And they do the MDR. They do the managed stuff. So they are the ones that are watching all of this activity and saying, hey, there's something wrong here. And in fact, we know it works because a couple of weeks after the event, I was having a call with my team, and we discovered that all of the Windows desktops during this whole week that we were going through the operations of rebuilding the servers and stuff like that, the desktop team was going through and cleaning up the desktops, so to speak, the users' desktops. So they had done that by, deleting the old software that was encrypted and installing new software and stuff like that, and never really having run the decryption key on those machines. So in one of my weekly meetings, like 2 or 3 weeks into this, we discovered that, we never ran the decryption process on the desktops because we didn't need it to. We reinstalled all the software that was needed. And I made a decision, hey, let's run the decryption software just so we make sure there's nothing hidden that we don't know about right now. And one night, so we have this conversation during the team meeting. Some day during that week, after hours, I finish my day and I'm in the car running some errands, and our incident response team reaches out to me and says, "Hey, we see activity from this user account that is touching a lot of files. Are you guys doing anything?" And it's after hours. I go, "I doubt that we're doing anything. Let me reach out to that gentleman." And I reached out to him and he goes, "No, I'm not doing anything on the machines." So we immediately raised the red flag that, hey, we're in a breach situation and everything's in process and everything's going on. And then cooler heads joined the call and they said, "Oh, we started doing the decryption before on these few machines since you asked us to." I go, "Okay." So yeah, they do. And in the past year or two, there's been a couple other incidents that turned out to be false alarms, but they are watching and raising the red flag and letting us know, which gives me the comfort feeling that from an MDR perspective, we are covered. I think the next wave of that is XDR, that they introduce AI into this whole thing, and I just think that's a selling thing because all of these tools have AI built in. So as long as you have a tool and a company that's trusted, doing that for you, then that's probably good.
I have a question about the MDR piece, because I looked at different products out there, and it was funny. We were going to engage with companies to resell different software, and then on the EDR side of things, and then we realized that the expectation is you also do all the work to manage it for people. And that's why you're reselling. We're like, that's a lot of work. We just wanted to sell it, but the question is. When I saw the demos, you could actually make a choice to block by default, and then allow, versus I guess zero trust is the term, versus allowing it and verifying that So why did you go? In you guys' thoughts on that one? Did you guys think through? Because you gave the example, hey, we're seeing a bunch of activity. I call people up. Should we block that? Versus it sees activity, it shuts the activity down, and then you call people to say, "Hey, should we now allow that?"
Yeah. So when you first install any type of software like this, you're probably going to get a lot of false positives. But at some point, you may not have as many false positives. So my take on it is that I could see, and this is kind of the way we went initially. Verify. But now we're at the point that on certain systems, in certain environments, we're like, no, shut it down first, ask questions later. And I think that just points to, each case, how comfortable am I to put all my trust in that software? And how comfortable am I that things are being caught and stuff like that. We have an incident where one machine just recently was being hacked because of the third-party software that was installed on that, and they couldn't update the third-party software because the ramifications of it and stuff like that. And we tried, for several weeks cleaning this machine, but it kept getting hacked the same way, type of thing. So that particular case, I basically told my, my MDR team that, hey, if you see something like this, just quarantine it, block it right away. Don't even ask, until we got to a point where we could decommission that server and that software and get it out of the environment. So depending on your comfort level and how much false positives you get and stuff like that, you may want to veer one way versus another.
That's probably why it's important to have that MDR company there to help you make those
decisions. They are awesome in raising. The analysts are they raise something, and then if we say I don't know what that is, they'll do a deeper dive, and be able to dive in. And they were actually, in hindsight, they were able to tell us things in the forensic analysis of those initial breached machines. They came in on this machine, then they jumped from that machine to this machine. They try to install X, Y, and Z on this machine. This is how they got the software installed on this machine to exfiltrate the data.
Wow. Wow.
They were able to put the pieces together. And that's just, not in my wheel case. You need a different type of mind, even if you have the software to do it. We are Elastic Shop. Elastic has ISIN software, security analysis software built in. We could technically do this ourselves, but I don't have the expertise, and I don't have anybody on my staff that has the expertise or the willingness to do this, day in, day out, 24/7.
Yeah.
So that's why you farm it out. Give it to somebody else.
I think a lot of times when people look at services and they think, oh, we can do it ourselves, but then for something like this, you want a company who's seen it in other places.
Yep.
Like, you don't want someone who's only been experienced at your shop, because they're not going to know all the other things.
Yep. And this goes to, we brought EDR in initially because it was a requirement from our cybersecurity vendor that they weren't gonna renew our
insurance
policy without EDR in place. Okay, we went and got EDR. It was very expensive and installed it. So yes, technically we're secure, but it's only as good as the operators of the software.
Mm-hmm.
And I alluded to this, in hindsight, we were able to see that they tried to install an executable on the machines to encrypt the files, and the EDR software stopped it. And then they, reworked the executable and kind of went back to the team. Hey, you told me this thing would work and it didn't work. Came back, a couple of days later and tried to install another executable, and that one installed. Had we known what we're looking at or what we're seeing, we would have seen, somebody's trying to install this executable and it doesn't seem, there's something fishy here. It smells, so what do we do about it?
How many, or go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say it's the constant struggle where, you have to be right every single time and they only have to be right once.
Yeah.
How many employees do you guys have?
Roughly between 400 and 500.
And I asked that because you've described several incidents of breaches or something where either through social engineering someone got into somebody, and people out there who are thinking, hey, we're too small to be attacked, or who they're not running EDR or MDR,
Mm-hmm.
They're just rocking out to their EDM, and they don't understand, they think they're safe.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, and there's probably somebody who's been in their system for months or years, and they're just sitting there like, oh, I'm not monitoring it, but we've had no issues.
Yeah. The types of breaches that we were seeing in our environment prior to this, and that's why, I always felt comfortable that, hey, we're protecting the perimeter. They can't get in, that type of thing. It would typically be through a phishing attack, trying to get somebody to put in their username and password into something. Our users would get things like, you're running out of space in your email account. Log into here to extend your space. And it's like, guys, we take care of that for you. You don't need to, but we have individuals that had notoriously, put in their Active Directory information. So we're a manufacturer and distributor of truck parts. And so we're dealing with suppliers from around the world that we're buying things from. So we're giving them money. And then we are dealing with customers from around the world where they are paying us money. And there was one incident where somebody had injected themselves. Somebody had their password compromised, and this compromised password had allowed someone to come in and get into somebody's email account. And they were probably sitting there for 6 months waiting for an opportunity to do something. And they had attached themselves to a thread that was going back and forth with a supplier. And that led to, them saying, once the transaction was done and we're going to send them money, getting a email from the supplier saying, we've been attacked, send the money to this account instead of our main account. And our people actually going through the exercise of calling the person and talking to them and validating. And this is somebody that we see in conferences, so we know them. We asked the questions and they gave all the right answers and all this stuff. So we ended up sending money to the wrong place. So
it's crazy what people can do.
So those attacks are getting amazingly sophisticated.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Those
are only going to get worse.
Those things, that's the next wave. We had somebody actually create a honest, like incorporated company of Xbyte, and in a state, create a bank account.
Yeah.
Under that company's name.
Yeah.
Then go out to a leasing company and say, "Hey, I have a deal for you." They grabbed an employee from our company, put it onto a fake invoice, sent it to them, and saying, "Hey, here's my bank account. You can check with this bank to say, hey, it's actually Xbyte," or whatever their conversation was. Yeah. The leasing company paid them. They waited a couple months. They came back to them, asked, "Hey, I got another deal for you. I got more deals for you." Mm-hmm. And so what we tell people, all of our anyone in our accounting department, before you pay somebody, go to their website, call the main number.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Use that switchboard.
Yeah.
Or some publicly available number, not the number on the invoice. Do all your verification outside of any information you're sent, and that will help you. Because if the leasing company would have done that, they would have never paid the money out, and the leasing company is out millions.
Yeah.
Yo, this drives me so crazy because so like I said, I'm a Chase Bank customer. And like once a quarter or something, I don't know how often it happens, I get an email from them that says, click here to activate your 5% cash back on restaurant and grocery purchases kind of thing, right? Well, whatever their little angle is. Yeah. So, every time you join a company, you go through security training, and a lot of stuff is, you hover over the links and the emails to make sure it's coming from the expected domains and it's coming from the right person. But because these are kind of marketing emails, right, it's like, the links go to bonkers websites with crazy long URLs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to click this link because I don't know if it's real. So I'll log into my Chase account to see if I can do it that way. But there's no way to do it through the Chase account website. It's like you can only do it through the email click.
Yep.
But I have no way that this is actually valid. I'm just like, one day I'm going to fall for this. I know it.
I another one of those things that we did after post launch was subscribe to software, security training for our employees.
Can confirm.
So people have to go through it. We run simulated tests where we will send.
Do you really?
Yeah, on a monthly basis, we'll send things. If people correctly identify something as a fish, they will be told immediately, "Good job, you identified this." If they click on it, they'll be immediately told, "This was a test and you failed." and we, on the management side of this, we see, this is the number of emails that went out on this campaign. This is the number of people that viewed it, opened it. This is the number of people that engaged, clicked on it. And here's your sole person that continues to put their username and password into the field. And it's like, what do you do?
So that person has 3FA. They have to do it twice, and like their manager has to like, "Hey, did you really?"
Yeah.
At work, as the new guy who doesn't really nobody knows me yet. I get no emails except phishing attacks. Literally, I get like 3 phishing attacks a day, either through text message or email. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
With email, we use Microsoft email, and I always have to try and figure out, okay, I get an email every day about like quarantined emails, but then I also have a junk folder.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's worse, because I now have to check both places. But junk doesn't email me the stuff in junk, so I guess junk's. Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea which one's worse, because like you'd think that because in the quarantine they send you, oh, this is like an ad. Like, well, why did that not get to junk? I don't understand the difference.
Yeah. Our system is such that people can click on a link within their Outlook to identify something as phishing. And like, if it's a campaign, they'll be told right away, hey, you failed or you passed, type of thing. But if it's a legitimate external email, if they click on that phishing icon, it gets taken out of their inbox and it goes through an analysis. It's an automated analysis. But then if the analysis engine doesn't find anything, the typical, there is no embedded links or the bad, known issues, they'll come back in their inbox.
Oh, okay.
But cool. That's a easy way that, hey, if you're in doubt, just click on this. It'll go through a secondary level of check, and then at least that it doesn't have, you're not going to install a ransomware if you click on this document.
That actually happened to me like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I got some weird email from somebody, but it was coming from a company email address. So I looked up on LinkedIn to see if this person actually works here, and like, oh yes, it's someone in sales or something. So I reached out to Sarah, and I marked it as phishing attack.
Yeah.
And then, like you're saying, it came back a couple hours later or something and said, no, this is actually a legitimate email. So then I reached out to Sarah and I said, hey, it's saying this is not a legitimate email, but I have no idea who this person is or what this email is about. And she was like, oh yeah, you were just added to the wrong email. But I felt like I was being vigilant.
There you go.
But if that person's been compromised, you may get a legitimate email from them.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah. A story I'll tell you, years and years ago, I don't even remember how many years ago, it must have been 15 years ago or whatever. And this is the time frame where people's outlooks would be compromised, and it would send emails. The typical attack was sending emails to your contacts, so it came from you, type of thing. And this is back when I was doing consulting, and I had sent an email to someone saying, hey, can you send me that file? And immediately I got an email back that said, here's a file you asked for. And that was the attack, sending files to people that said, here's the file you asked for. And I clicked on it. And as soon as I clicked on it, I knew I just installed something. So it's like, I had to rebuild my machine at that time. So.
That's awful.
But yeah, I mean, you get caught off guard. So attacks have gotten much more sophisticated than that level of, every email you got was, here's a file you asked for. Well, I didn't.
Well, they had the guy, what was it? I was listening to a podcast a couple of months ago, and there was the guy who transferred a bunch of money from a bank, but he literally was on a Zoom call with people from the bank, but all of the Zoom calls, like everyone else but him, was a simulated, like an AI based video call. I mean, it's nuts what people are doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just going to get worse.
Right?
So the taking the posture that, I can't, it used to be that my manager and I would kind of joke, who's in our system today? We don't joke about that anymore. But it used to be, we would try to prevent people from coming in. Now I'm on the mindset that, the next, breach is waiting to happen, not because we did anything wrong, just because there are 0-day vulnerabilities being caught in the entire stack of tools that we use. And one of these is eventually going to cause us to be caught in another thing. My thing is going to be, can I put in place enough things for the company to recover as quickly as possible? And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Very nice. I think it's a good place to kind of end it for. It's like hey, you're not able to stop everybody, but figure out how you're gonna be able to recover from that.
Yeah.
So tons of good information, great stories. This has been one of the rare times where I think Ben and I kind of just sat back and listened most of the time.
All right. I feel like I have to at least make one pop culture reference, but there is a recent Robert De Niro movie or miniseries on Netflix called 0 Day, which just came out like 2 months ago.
Oh.
And it's all about this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's 4 episodes. It's like they made it the right length. Some miniseries are way too long. You're like, this could have been half this, and I feel like it was pretty compelling. 0 Day, Robert De Niro.
Yeah,
nice.
Look into that. Yeah.
All right, well, guys, Peter, thank you for joining us. Ben, of course, thank you for hosting with me.
Absolutely.
This has been an amazing, intriguing story. I mean, this should be the basis of 0 Day. The next miniseries starring Peter Amiri.
Peter and Mary.
Yeah.
Peter and Mary. That's going to have to come up.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you guys for having us. As always, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.